to the destruction that's going to come. And it's the blood of his enemies. And it's showing that Christ will crush his enemies, and it's going to be a bloody battle. Think of like the bloodiest movie. Okay, anybody, what's a bloody war movie that you guys have seen?
Patriot.
The Patriot?
Patriot, yeah.
Saving Private Ryan.
Any others?
Saving Private Ryan.
Saving Private. What about Braveheart? All right, think of like how those were really bloody. You know? That's how this is going to be. His robe is dipped in blood because his destruction of his enemies is going to be really bloody. It's going to be a bloody massacre. All right? And then finally, it says, he's the leader of a great army in heaven who is dressed in white and riding white war horses. This is showing that no human army can compare and match the sheer power of Christ's army behind him. It's showing that he is the ultimate leader, and he is in charge of the greatest army. And then finally, the third category is that Christ's passionate purpose points to his great victory. And this is like a purpose to judge. And the first thing is that verse 15 says that out of his mouth comes a sharp two-edged sword to strike the nations. The sharp sword represents the deadly quality of his word of judgment. And Christ's tongue will cut his enemies to pieces. This is going to be a proclamation of saying to the guilty, you are guilty, and you are going to be condemned forever. And it's going to be a sentence to the evil, that you are going to be destroyed. And then in verse 15 also says that he will rule the nations with a rod of iron. This is meaning when someone, the rule of like a rod of iron is meaning that it is going to be unbending and unchanging. It's going to be strong, and his judgment, no one's going to be able to change it at this time, because he's going to destroy all of evil. And then finally, he is saying that he treads the winepress of the Almighty God's wrath. This is showing that he is going to stomp his enemies to death. Like, and the blood of his enemies are going to flow like how the juice would flow out of a winepress. That's pretty gruesome, huh? That's scary. But it's true. And that's God's wrath. And that's how serious God is about sin. That the blood of the evil and people who are against God is going to flow like the juice flowing from a winepress. So those are a lot of the characteristics of Jesus during his second coming, and of what he's going to look like for this great battle. So I'm going to ask someone else to read about the battle in verses 17 through 21. Can someone read for me? Brandon, you're a great reader. I'll have you read again.
This thing isn't even.
I think it is on.
Then I saw the angel standing in the sun, shouting to the vultures flying high in the sky, Come, gather together for the great banquet God has prepared. Come and eat the flesh of kings, captains, and the strong warriors, of horses and their riders, and all of great humanity, both free and slave, small and great. But then I saw the beast gathering the kings of the earth and their armies in order to fight against the one sitting on the horse and his army. And the beast was captured, and with him the false prophet who did mighty miracles on behalf of the beast, miracles that deceived all who had accepted the mark of the beast and who have worshipped his statue. Both the beast and his false prophet were thrown alive into the lake of fire that burns with sulfur. The entire enemy was killed by both the sharp sword that came out of the mouth of the one riding the white horse, and all the vultures of the sky gorged themselves on the dead bodies.
Thanks. Ooh. All right. Wouldn't this make a sweet movie? You know, like how how in like a movie, how there's always like this great warrior, and they're always riding on a horse, and they're about to lead their people to safety and to like a great victory. So the great warrior always has like long hair, and it always goes in like slow motion, and the hair's like flapping in the wind. You know, and they're riding on the horse, and everybody's just screaming and praising God. That's what's happening here. You know, like, can you imagine just slow motion of Jesus with his eyes full of fire, with his robe dipped in blood? He's riding on a white horse, and his army's behind him. It's just in slow motion. It'd be a sweet movie. And then he comes down, and he has this great victory. And Jesus is going to triumph over all of the rejection of the world. So, in these verses that Brandon just read, we see that judgment awaits all those who oppose Christ. And it starts out in verses 17 and 18 that there's going to be like a call to the birds. An angel calls all the birds and says, prepare yourselves, because you're going to have a great feast on all of the dead bodies, because I'm going to win. And pretty much, it doesn't go into much detail about this battle. The victory is overwhelming, and it's very powerful. Pretty much the battle is done before it even starts. Like, it doesn't go into anything and say, and then Jesus slaughtered this guy, and this guy, and this guy. You know, it's pretty much over before it even starts. And the first thing that happens in verses 19 and 20 is that the beast and the false prophet who were ruling the earth during the tribulation are cast in the lake of fire, which is eternal torment, an eternal separation from God. They were trying to have people worship them. Brandon read it. And they were trying to have people just lead them astray from God. And Jesus comes down, and he eternally casts them into the lake of fire, which they'll be there for eternity. And then the second thing is that the armies of the beast are slaughtered by the sword, and then they're fed to the birds. And that's the last thing in there. And a lot of times, I feel like we think the battle's like this. This is from the movie Troy, and how there's just two armies, you know? We think of it like that, and you know how like they just run at each other and then just start killing each other. A lot of times we think of it like Jesus' army, and then the army of the beast. But it's not like that. It actually isn't really a physical event. It's more of a spiritual event. And the reason it's like this is because there's like two reasons. And it's the anticlimactic battle of like the sword coming out of his mouth is meaning like Jesus' words. And he's so powerful that like he sends the beast and the false prophet into like a spiritual realm of like the lake of fire. Like obviously the lake of fire is not on earth right now, so it's not a physical event, it's a spiritual event. And the other reason is because it's not really a sword, like I said, it's just Jesus' words. So that's why it's like a spiritual event rather than a physical event that we would normally think of it as. And some of you might be disappointed by that, and you might be like, well, that kind of stinks. Like I kind of wanted to look down from heaven and be like, yeah, Jesus go, and then slaughtering a bunch of people. But it's not going to be like that. It's going to be a spiritual event, but we can still be happy because it just shows that, like normally in a war, both sides have people die. But in this battle, nobody dies on Jesus' side because he's so powerful that his words can just cast people into the lake of fire and just destroy everything. So you guys might be like, okay, how does this apply to me? You know, this is going to be cool in the future. But how can I apply this to myself? And there's a lot of ways we can apply Revelation to our lives. The first is that we need to take sin seriously in our lives. That this wrath and judgment that is going to be poured out is real. And it is something that's going to be happening. And we need to really realize this. And that might be discomforting for us to be like, well, I kind of always thought of God as like this loving,